poor, impoverished ass. We need a change and we need it fast. Human rights and less parasitic, blood-sucking greed. Full employment, full pay, and full benefits is what we need. Legitimate, egalitarian, universally representative democracy. A viable society, peace, goodwill, and universal economy. A greater evil comes this way. State of emergency, you see. United States of America, USA. Today, that's us, my friend, you and me. Worsening extant, internal, antisocial, uneconomic conditions throughout the whole nation. A gluttony called depression, recession, economic crisis, and inflation, and pollution pose imminent threat to the viability of the whole society, and yet I see quite clear the proper and correct solution and resolution. The lives of the people, their welfare, and the peace, goodwill, cooperation, and the universal economy, requisite and inalienable to their existence, and to Mother Nature's requisite insistence for a viable society that can endure, with food and water and air that's pure, and legitimate government with resolution. There is legitimate, viable, precedented solution. Gather round those common and snob. This is a comprehensive view of the prob. Collectively, in concert and cooperation with one another, the families of the professionals, mother, father, sister, and brother, a minority clan or ruling class, will bless my poor impoverished ass. Full employment, full pay, and full benefits is what we need. Human rights and less parasitic, blood-sucking greed. Legitimate, egalitarian, universally representative democracy. A viable society, peace, goodwill, and universal economy. 10% of the population on the institutional, corporate, industrial plantation, PhDs and families of PhDs, doctors and the doctors' families, lawyers and judges and other professionals, executives in families and the way they live, parent, issue, sibling, cousin, spouse, and in-law, take, and never give. Thinking themselves Mother Nature's ultimate evolutionary, intellectual, and physical accomplishment, have monopolized the executive and effective positions of institutions, corporations, industry, and government. Like the families who call themselves royals and aristocrats, who believe themselves to be the chosen cats and elect brats of the wrathful, vengeful, bloodthirsty male humanoid ethereal of the imagination of the primitive steroid and unreal, ignorant, violent, brutal, primitive Jews, and this ain't bringing anyone news. A new royal, aristocratic, superior, privileged ruling class will bless my poor, impoverished ass. Full employment, full pay, and full benefits is what we need. Human rights and less parasitic, blood-sucking greed. Legitimate, egalitarian, universally representative democracy. A viable society, peace, goodwill, and universal economy. Thinking themselves Mother Nature's evolutionary accomplishment, thinking themselves above it all and heaven sent, have monopolized the executive and effective positions and powers of the government, institutions, churches, synagogues, mosques, corporations, and industrial enterprises, invented and assigned themselves at great and any cost artificial titles and certificates of imagined degrees of high and superior prelates, certificates of executive license and titles of ownership of more than 98% of the wealth of the nation, have issued themselves unconscionable salaries and benefits without hesitation, and have collected profits and dividends that come from monopoly of markets. My dear friends, of goods and services and ever-increasing prices, taxes, usury rents, foreclosures, seizures, Cadillac taxes, fines and fees, repossessions, eminent domain, unemployment, putting people on their knees, by exclusion, of course, of the people from the social and economic intercourse requisite for a good life or any life at all, and exploitation of the desperation created by such exclusion of the whole damned nation that is about to fall, to extort full-time, part-time, and temporary labor cheaply and without benefits, necessary for them to create ever-growing poverty in the midst of plenty, homelessness, lack, want, deprivation, exposure, malnutrition, starvation. What a mess. Lack of medical care, occupational hazards, early deaths, no new clothes to wear, general society-wide desperation, violence, crime, institutional violations of human rights across the nation, injustice, perversion, injustice, brutality, false accusations, false arrest, false smiles and feigned fraternity, false witness, false evidence, malicious prosecutions, wrongful imprisonments and incarcerations, poisoned needles, electrocutions, brutality, isolation, wrongful executions, ritual human sacrifice, destruction of the legitimate, egalitarian, universally representative democratic government, and like playing dice, destruction of the viability of the society, its peace, goodwill, and universal economy. We need a change, and we need it fast. Well, bless my poor, impoverished ass. Full employment, full pay, and full benefits is what we need. Human rights and less parasitic, blood-sucking greed. Legitimate, egalitarian, universally representative democracy, a viable society, peace, goodwill, and universal economy, cooperation among the folks, that's all she wrote. Precedented, legitimate, successful resolution. Roosevelt legislation 1941, full employment, full pay, full benefits, and control of the institutional, corporate, and industrial prices and fees. The Roosevelt legislation ended the cycle of ever-increasing universal poverty, desperation, violence, crime, long and great suffering and early deaths of the Great Depression, and retaining and sharing more equitably only 10% of the nation's production, 90% being destroyed in war's destruction, the peace, goodwill, and cooperation among the people across the nation, no more rising prices or inflation, and the universal economy requisite to a viable society, the nation, its survival returned to make the general population of the United States of America the most affluent people of the world, and permitted the social, economic, cultural, scientific, and artistic progress for America's world prominence with flags unfurled. Upon the suspension of the Roosevelt legislation began again the rape of the whole damned nation. In 1946, the executives of the institutions, corporations, and industrial enterprises immediately began to increase prices, fees, and executive and professional salaries and bonuses, no surprises, and to exclude people from the economy, specifically for the purpose of creating poverty and desperation to extort labor cheaply in order to gain profits and dividends. 65 years of ever-increasing elitist inequity and exclusion, my dear friends, have created the present conditions of universal and ever-growing desperation, poverty, homelessness, long and great suffering, early deaths, again all across the nation, institutionalized violations of human rights, injustice, violence and crime, and fights. As the professional families, millionaires grow richer, we need a change and we need it fast. Well, bless my poor impoverished ass. Full employment, full pay, and full benefits is what we need. Human rights and less parasitic, blood-sucking greed. Legitimate, egalitarian, universally representative democracy, a viable society, peace, goodwill, and universal economy. Human rights requisite to the establishment and maintenance of legitimate government and viable society. The right to life, to live and not to be killed by insane people with ugly will who happen upon executive and effective powers of government, institutions, corporations, and industry of the whole damned nation. The right to exercise conscionable liberties, those that cause no harm or death, if you please. The right to freedom of speech, expression, religion, belief, philosophy, theories and postulations that neither advocate nor violate human rights, you see, nor cause harm or death. The right to social and economic intercourse requisite to a good life, full employment, full pay, and full benefits, and fair prices, and free from strife. The right to freedom from slavery, by any name, extorted labor, labor gained inequitable, labor for inequitable low or no wages, or temporary part-time and no benefits, and freedom from the compulsion of religious and other uneconomic antisocial philosophy and fits of elitism, inequity, exclusion, and human sacrifice, and other things that ain't too nice. The right not to be dispossessed, relocated, contained, isolated, compelled, or brutalized, or brained, and the right to equal representation and participation in governmental, institutional, corporate, and industrial cooperation, determinations, regulations, and implementations to avoid the early deaths and starvations. These are some human rights. Anything that does not cause harm or death is a human right, and such delight. We need a change, and we need it fast. Well, bless my poor impoverished ass. Full employment and full benefits is what we need. Human rights and less parasitic, blood-sucking greed. Legitimate, egalitarian, universally representative democracy, a viable society, peace, goodwill, and universal economy. Full employment, full pay, and full benefits is what we need. Human rights and less parasitic, blood-sucking greed.